Purple Heart is the most recognized award for a serviceman or woman who sustains a combat injury, proving a sacrifice of personal safety. Notable recipients include Franklin Delano Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, and Stubby, a dog that served in World War I. Over time, the criteria has changed, and now the official guidelines are, according to Recognize the Sacrifice, the Purple Heart is awarded in the name of the President of the United States to any member of an armed force or any civilian national of the United States who, while serving under competent authority in any capacity with one of the U.S. Armed Services after April 5, 1917, has been wounded or killed, or who has died or may hereafter die after being wounded. The idea for the Purple Heart was first introduced during the American Revolution by General George Washington. The resulting award was created in 1782 and called the Badge of Military Merit. However, the award was discontinued and largely forgotten after the Revolution. It wasn't until Douglas MacArthur in 1932 that the Purple Heart was officially created. Since 1932, the Purple Heart criteria has expanded to include all branches of the military, wounds resulting from friendly fire, and allows a service member to be awarded posthumously. In recent years, there has been a movement to include wounds that lie beneath the surface, particularly post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. PTSD is a mental condition characterized by flashbacks, nightmares, depression, anxiety, and angry outbursts. Veterans may develop PTSD because of survivor guilt, being an agent of killing, and from the experience of sustaining a combat wound. Potential consequences to the disease include substance abuse, suicidal attempts, and other forms of risky behavior.
Okay, I don't want to go in detail about it. I went through some pretty heavy combat in Afghanistan. Yeah, I felt a sense of guilt and, well, pretty much just guilt after I got back from it. Some guys, the good guys didn't, like most of the good friends, like, didn't make it home. So I didn't, the way I processed those feelings were, I didn't notice, but I would just go out and, like, I started drinking a lot, being angry all the time. And I just didn't do anything about it. I didn't think it was an issue because most of us just dealt with it. Like, everybody else in my unit was dealing with it the same.
According to the Department of Veteran Affairs, those with PTSD are 14.9 times more likely to attempt suicide than those without. PTSD is a serious, debilitating condition that affects anywhere from 10 to 20% of servicemen and women currently, and approximately 50% of Vietnam veterans. As the stigma around mental illness starts to decline, and we have become more aware of the mental sacrifice our military makes, many people have started to ask, why doesn't mental illness qualify a person for the Purple Heart? According to the definition of the Purple Heart, one can receive the award for a wound as small as a scratch. Critics of the current standards argue that if minor flesh wounds are allowed, so should a mental illness. If we really want to support our troops to the best of our abilities, we need to recognize this area of suffering that has been historically ignored. "50% of military service members or veterans with PTSD do not seek treatment, partly because they don't want to seem weak. Expanding the Purple Heart to include these people proves that it is okay to get treatment for a mental illness just as you would for a physical illness." In 2009, the Defense Department ruled again that since PTSD is not physical, it does not meet the guidelines. However, ongoing research has proven that there is a link between microscopic brain injuries from explosions, altercations, and other combat-related events and PTSD. meaning that PTSD can sometimes be a mental manifestation of a physical condition. Mental health advocacy groups urge the Pentagon to take these findings into consideration. Those opposed to allowing PTSD to qualify for the award say that PTSD is treatable, whereas combat wounds are not, citing examples like lost limbs or eyesight. However, this is not necessarily true. An injured veteran can receive a new organ or repair broken bones, but many of those who suffer from PTSD will have the condition until their death. Similarly, the advancements we are making in the medical profession are constantly redefining what is physically possible. For example, until the 1880s, a burn victim's physical scarring was seen as permanent. With the advancements in skin grafting and now with recent breakthroughs in artificial skin, a burn victim can potentially look completely normal and live a completely normal life. Supporters of the current standards also say that since we cannot tangibly prove a military member has suffered from PTSD, some may try to fake the disease to win the Purple Heart. While this is a legitimate fear, we can tangibly prove if a service man or woman has been undergoing therapy to treat their disease. Psychiatrists can also observe the potential symptoms to determine the severity. Also, our military members are some of our most upstanding and dedicated citizens, and have proven their commitment to the ideals in which the United States was founded upon. To deny every person with PTSD even the chance for a Purple Heart out of fear that a non-sufferer may abuse the new guidelines is insulting. This also delegitimizes their pain by saying that their suffering isn't bad enough or there's a good chance that it may be feigned, thus reinforcing the stigma around mental illness. Some say we should not change the criteria because then too many people would be eligible. In opposition to this view, many argue that having too many people that have demonstrated extreme bravery to their detriment of their personal safety is an outstanding problem to have. If we are so concerned about too many service members being recognized for their service, why even recognize their sacrifices at all? With that logic, we should discontinue awarding any and all service medals to our military to preserve the integrity of those who have already received the awards. If we want to maintain the legitimacy and the prestige of the Purple Heart, we must recognize the sacrifices that are less easy to measure and observe, but are just as debilitating. These men and women have put their lives on the line for our freedom and safety, and we owe them the deserved recognition for their sacrifice.